contest, it doesn't make me the complete champion, and it certainly doesn't make me an expert. And this evening, what I'd like to do is share my experience and some insights that I gleaned from the 12 years that I've been a member of Toastmasters. And I can't talk about crafting or creating a contest speech without talking about the all-important benefits of competing. There is no doubt about it that it's an accelerated learning experience. From the moment that you decide to compete and you start creating your speech until the point that you finish competing at whatever level that is, you're on a journey. It really is like sitting on a rocket, because you're constantly refining the speech and getting more and more feedback. And it's that feedback that we all thrive on. Now, I sometimes say that people need broad shoulders to take the amount of feedback that we're given. Some of it is not even requested, but as you all know, Toastmaster members love to give feedback. And what I've found in preparing for each level of the contest is that you have to be a bit discerning, and you have to listen to all the feedback. But sometimes, even though the feedback might be good, it just doesn't suit you or your style of speaking, or doesn't actually suit the style of the speech. So I'd say take the feedback, but trim it to suit your needs. This journey that we all go on when we compete, because it is accelerated, means that we gain a lot of confidence with each step. You have audiences applauding, you get the feedback, and then each time you move up to a subsequent level of competing, it does good for one's confidence. And it's a great platform to try things that it's not that serious if it doesn't work. I speak a lot professionally, and competing helps me keep those skills really sharp. And as the 2014 world champion in Kuala Lumpur said, the trophies and titles don't matter. It's who you become that is the real prize. Because when you're constantly refining your speech, delivering it to multiple audiences, you do get to learn more about yourself, and hopefully in that process you grow. Now, one of the key things that I think we need to mention when we talk about preparing a contest speech are the objectives. Why are you competing? Not only what you'll gain, but what is the point of your speech? Is it to inform or educate, to motivate, entertain, or persuade? And I think we need to remember that the style of the speech and the objectives need to dovetail into each other. I always say, if your objective for competing is to win, then that is the wrong objective. Remove that idea. Winning, as I always say, is just the cherry on top. It's the process that you go through that is so enriching. But now let's talk about selecting a topic. Remember that some topics cannot be delivered in the 7 or 7.5 minutes that we have. So think about the timing that you have and whether the topic will fit into it. And there's something else to do with the 7 minutes. Remember that your speech might be 7 minutes, but every single person in the audience is giving you 7 minutes of their time. So in reality, the theme and the way you structure your speech is a gift of 7 minutes from you to your audience. Make that 7 minutes count. Relevance is an important thing. You know, we are all passionate about certain topics, and you heard Elena say in her introduction that one of my key objectives is about talking about how to improve the access to orphan drugs for rare diseases. Well, if I did a speech on that in a Toastmasters contest environment, I'd be booed off the stage. So the fact that I want to talk about it doesn't help if my audience aren't interested. And that Venn diagram, that center point, is really important. We have to remember that we're in a very diverse district, and obviously globally too. So the message and the stories that we tell do need to be universal. Some years ago, we had a division contestant in one of the Swiss divisions. In fact, it was when Switzerland was one country, who spoke about the journey of becoming Swiss. It was a hilarious, brilliant speech, but it wasn't universal. It had zero relevance outside of Switzerland. And good as it was, it didn't get higher than the division level. There is an unwritten law or rule, and it's really unwritten, that we're supposed to be doing motivational speeches for the English International Contest. And if you've watched any of the speeches in the past, that is the form they tend to take. But there's no reason why that has to be the case. If you've got a great story with some kind of a message, it's just as good. It doesn't always have to be motivational, but then it has to have an entertainment value. Over and above everything, you need to find a topic that you're passionate about, that enthusiasm that you have for the topic will come out when you're doing the speech. And if you have to do the speech over and over again, which is great because it means you're going up the ranks, that passion needs to really be there. You need to be knowledgeable about the topic and obviously keen to share it. The introduction to the speech, I think this is something that causes a lot of consternation for many of us when we start writing speeches. In reality, I always start with the end in mind, but let's follow a little bit of a chronology in terms of speech development. That introduction has got to be really hot. It's got to be magnetic to entice the audience to really sit up or lean forward and listen to the speaker. So you could start with a really powerful quotation if it's relevant to the speech topic. You could start with a joke, although there I would caution a bit because of our cultural diversities. You need to test the joke out on people from many different countries or different cultures to make sure that it isn't offensive to anyone in particular. If you're storytelling or using some parts of a story, why not start with a cliffhanger? Throw in some suspense so that the audience are really sitting on the edge of their seats, and you can then draw them into the rest of the story. Or, as we all know, opening a speech with a question is really effective. I sometimes think that it's good to even repeat the question with a bit of a pause between them so that your audience can really think about it. It also stresses from you to the audience that you want them to take that question very seriously. And then, as I think it was the 2018 champion, opened with some statistics. He admitted later that the statistics were a complete pack of lies, but it is certainly a great way to pull an audience in. And if those statistics are made up, they need to be really exaggerated so that your audience realize and then look forward to what else is coming from you in terms of those statistics. It's suggested that the introduction should be about 10% of the time or the value of the speech, and the same applies for the conclusion. And that gives you a really good, let's say, almost 5.5 minutes for the body of the speech. Now, let's go into the body of the speech, which, as I said earlier, has to dovetail into your speech style. You may want to tell a story. So if it's something that's happened to you, the style of the speech is going to follow that chronological order of the story. When we read books, we're often thrown between something that happened in the past and something that's happening in the present, and then goes back to the past. And that's very good when it's written material. But I think that when you're doing a speech, if you jump backwards and forwards and then back again, you run the risk of losing the audience. And therefore, I believe that it is far safer to develop the story as it happened chronologically, and then to draw it to its conclusion in whichever way you feel is relevant. If you're going to do a persuasive speech, the logic says that you should present the problem, what the realization would be or was, and then present the solution. And if you were going to present a motivational speech, often these are based on your own experience. So you would have something like the hero's journey, then the inspiration to change, and somewhere link it with the emotional experience for yourself, and hopefully something that you can impart to the audience as well. And then that all-encompassing conclusion, as I said, approximately 10% of the speech is given to that. You usually wrap it up in what was learned in an eloquent way, not saying what was learned. You would have a call to action in that. I think that it's quite good to repeat the call to action using different words so that it really stresses the point. You'd hopefully be able to play on the audience's emotions using either a quotation or that whole concept of lesson learned, the hero's journey and how you came to the end of the journey, and then hopefully challenge your audience to look at something differently or to think about things differently. One of the things that we mustn't forget, and it's incredibly valuable, are the speech tools that we have at our disposal. All these things like alliterations and metaphors, and these are just some of the examples. I tend to use these quite a lot because I find that it enriches the language, it helps with the vocal variety. More importantly, it helps me to remember my speeches because it creates little anchors throughout the speech. And of course, if you're improving your delivery by having these anchors and improving the vocal variety, they appeal to the audience. And in some cases, particularly things like similes or hyperboles, they help the audience to visualize different parts of your speech. These tools enable us to use truly descriptive language, and I can't rate them enough. The delivery itself, I mean, I feel like it's a bit cheeky for me to be talking to experienced members like yourself about delivery. But one thing that I would like to stress is that all these different elements need to dovetail into each other. The movement, the gestures, the voice, not only into each other and eye contact, but also they need to relate to the topic and the style with which you speak. And it's such a personal thing. In terms of movement and using the stage that's at your disposal, one thing I'd like to mention, and this was a hard-learned experience at the district contest in Milan in May, is that the stage might not be what you expect. The stage was actually not that wide and not that deep. And right in front of the speakers were the video cameras, because it had to be filmed, obviously, for the videos to go to the regional level. And below the video camera was a teleprompt, quite a big television, where I was seeing myself delivering my speech. And the reason I mention this is because it can be extremely unsettling when you come up on stage, you shake hands with the contest chair, and you turn to face the audience. You see the camera, the teleprompt, and behind that, the audience. And that can restrict your movement a bit, not only because it's off-putting, but as I said, because of the size of the stage. And there is something else to remember with movement is if you're going to be on a stage that's quite high up above the audience, have a go before you get on stage and get a mentor or a friend to look at your movements and to see what they look like from an audience perspective. And similarly, if the stage is not very high, as it was in Milan, it was actually very, very low, maybe 30 centimeters, make sure that the movements you're going to use are not only tailored to your speech and your delivery style, but that the audience can actually see you. I find that sometimes in Toastmasters, our gestures can become a little bit over-contrived. So I would just say, be natural, be relaxed, and use the gestures that come naturally to you. Don't over-plan them, because I think that that creates that over-contrived and almost static look. With respect to the voice, I think you've all done countless educationals on vocal variety and using volume and pitch and pace and all the different tools for the voice. So I'm not going to speak about that. But I do want to speak about eye contact, because I think that the way we relate to an audience with our eyes creates a rapport and creates the credibility. We recently had a club meeting where one of our speakers kept on looking to the side of the room. And as a result of that, I started looking to where she was looking. So remember that the eye contact with the audience is really critical to get that rapport going. In terms of the speed of speaking, I tend to speak quite slowly, and I'm at about 125 words per minute. The range can go up to 160 words per minute. I recommend that if you're competing, you record yourselves and work out, and I think there are a lot of apps or tools that one can use to find out your rate of speaking. I think that slower is better for a number of reasons. A, because we're not always speaking to people who are native to our language, whichever language we're speaking in. B, because it helps you think more clearly about your speech, your movements, and everything that you need to do in terms of your delivery. And also it enables time for the audience to follow what you're saying. Because one thing is for sure, when you know your speech really well, you do know it really well, but your audience doesn't. And you need to slow down so that they can follow it. It's not only about the pauses, it is also about the speed at which you speak. A little bit about visual aids, because this is something I learned when I attended the World Championships in Kuala Lumpur in 2014. I wasn't competing, obviously, but I was asked to be a prop support for some of the speakers, which means being backstage and bringing the props onto stage. And there's something that we have to remember, that usually in a club meeting, it's quite easy to use a flip chart or a PowerPoint projector. But the bigger the audience, the bigger the room, the harder all these props become to use. Firstly, because you can't bring it on stage, so you need somebody to be your prop manager and to put it on stage in the right place. Secondly, because you need to make sure that the way you're used to doing your speech in a club environment or at area level can be done the same way, bearing in mind that the stage and the room will be different. And those props, if they're not in the right place, will be a distraction to you as a speaker and could really impact negatively on your delivery and on the speech value. Remember that the bigger the audience, the bigger the prop needs to be. And to give you an example, for those of you who were in Milan in May at the district contest, we had a very narrow, very, very long room. So most likely, if somebody was using props, the people halfway from the audience and further back would not have seen them. And I always worry that any prop can go wrong. It's a bit like technology. So I always think if I had a chair on stage and I happen to need to sit on it during my speech, chances are it would collapse under me. And that is really not what you want when you're on stage speaking. I've learned from experience that a lot of contestants never stop to look at what the judges are judging with the ballot, what they're using. And it's valuable to remember that 50% of the points come from the content. So even if you have a stellar delivery, you might not do all that well unless the content is really top-notch, and also looking at the language. What I recommend to contestants from club level is that they go through the form with one or two friends or their mentors or somebody from the club who's really supporting their contest journey, and look at how their speech meets all of these different criteria, because that is the opportunity to hone it. If you've got a friend or a club member who's an experienced judge, I highly recommend that you sit down with them and go through it and see it from a judge's perspective, because invariably we love our own speeches. We think our speeches are great, otherwise we wouldn't be delivering them. But that's our perspective. We need to also see it from the perspective of somebody who's the judge, who's never heard the speech before and who's sticking to these criteria. A little bit about audience management, the all-important eye contact. One of the things I've noticed with inexperienced members, and sometimes when members are very nervous, is that they tend to pan the audience. They go from side to side quite rapidly, which is not only distracting to an audience if they're watching it, but actually, rapid eye movement from side to side is a great way to increase adrenaline and increase nervousness. The way to approach this is to think that for each time you look at somebody, you need to connect with their eyes. 1 or 2 seconds looking really into their eyes, and then slowly move sideways or a bit further back. Don't pan, don't move the head quickly, because actually that's unsettling to yourself as a speaker. Again, when a room is an awkward shape, if it's either narrow and very deep or extremely wide, your eye contact needs to take that into account. In Milan, as I said, the room was narrow and deep. And the way I found, and I hope my audience felt that way, is I would lower my head a bit and create eye contact with the people in the front. I think Helen Christram is online. She can probably confirm that I connected with her. And then gradually lift my head a bit to create eye contact with the people who were in the middle part of the audience. And then raise my head even more to create the eye contact and to really look into the eyes of people who were further back. Invariably, that's quite difficult because they are quite far, and with my eyesight, not so great. But then, if a room is extremely wide, it's an opposite problem in that it might be shallow, but you will have people who may be almost out of the side of your line of vision. And there you really need to turn your head and look at them, and then gradually come back to the center, and then gradually move out without that very rapid panning movement. This is where I think that audiences can be very supportive or unsettling. And I have this little thing in my head which I called find the fans in the audience, not the fans that circulate air, fans, the people who support you. In every audience, there are some people who are looking up, who look engaged. Use them as your fans, in inverted commas, and create the contact, the eye contact with them, and not only look at them, but look at others as well. Try not to be unsettled by the people who don't seem to be looking at you because they're looking at their phones. It's not that they're not listening, they may actually be taking notes. There are also some people in the audience who have these deep frowns on their faces, and that is really unsettling, especially when you're at that high level of competing. You start to focus on and think, what, have I said something wrong? Have I forgotten a part of my speech? Ignore that. They're just concentrating on your speech. So focus on those fans, the people that are smiling and that look engaged. If the audience happen to applaud, or even one or two people happen to applaud during your speech, let them. Don't start speaking while they're still applauding. There is a risk, however, that if you've got a hilarious speech and you're allowing them to applaud midway through or at some point in the speech, you will go over time. Build that into the structuring of your speech. I don't know if any of you were present in Cologne quite a few years back. Carsten Wendt was doing a speech that was absolutely hilarious, and the audience kept on breaking out into applause. And the end result is that he went 7 minutes over. Now, if you're going to be doing such a hilarious speech, build that in. Most important of all is just adore being on stage. Get that positive energy going, because I believe that audiences can feel it when the contestant or the speaker is really enthusiastic and is really enjoying being on stage. A little bit about controlling nerves that we can't actually cover in this because it's a whole session on its own. But importantly, if you're going to compete, start preparing your speech way before your first club contest. I would say a good 3 months. And the reason you need to do that is because you write it once, you leave it for a week or two, you come back and you refine it. It's an iterative process whereby you keep needing to refine it until you think it's ready. Don't do it at the last minute. It is nerve-wracking. If you've done your speech well before and it starts to feel very familiar, it'll help you control your nerves. The other thing about controlling nerves is authenticity. If you are naturally yourself, you're not pretending to be somebody, you don't have to try and remember who you are, you will feel so much more at ease. Now, there's a little biological trick in all of this. If you keep smiling, or if you smile for a good 15, 20 minutes before you go on stage, it releases endorphins, happy hormones, and those lower the heart rate. They lower the adrenaline release and they lower the heart rate. And that is the best way of controlling nerves. And that is supported by you really warming up your voice. In May, I spent half an hour before the final, the district finals, walking up and down and warming up my voice. I was also doing other silly things like pulling faces, opening the mouth very wide, opening it both ways, long ways, sideways, very wide, to release any tension in the jaw and the cheeks and make the tongue really fluid so that there wouldn't be that initial dry croak when you come on stage when you're very nervous. And simultaneously, I am a great believer in warming up the body, really get rid of the tension in the shoulders, in every part of the body, so that when you come on stage, you really feel comfortable. And with that being comfortable, wear whatever clothes suit you. If you feel comfortable in, I wouldn't say a tracksuit, but if you feel comfortable in casual clothing, wear that. You don't have to wear a formal suit, because if it's going to make you uncomfortable, no matter of voice warming and body warming, if you feel as if you're in a straitjacket, it comes across in the delivery of the speech. And of course, the obvious, I'm speaking to the choir, practice, practice, practice. However, I think that there is a very fine line between over practicing, where it just sounds like you're a parrot repeating the speech, and being under practiced, where you don't feel like the speech is part of you. So if you can find that fine line between the authenticity, being warmed up, having practiced the speech well enough for it to feel like it's part of you, you're onto a winner. And with that, I'd like to open the floor to questions. Gosh, you're all so quiet.
I was going to
I
raise
see a
my
hand. Vina, I see your hand's gone up.
Hi, thank you so much, Karina, for this so much of value. I wish I had gone through it last year. Last year in my speech, I faced such a dilemma. I was speaking to a crowd, and imagine the crowd was not in front of me. The audience was seated on both sides.
Oh
You know,
my word.
I wasn't sure whether my eye contact should be to the camera or to my right side or to my left side. And I was going all over the stage, completely confused. So it kind of, yeah, in your words, it was very unsettling for me.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Vina. I think one of the things I haven't touched on is the fact that this year's contest is hybrid again, like the upcoming season, like the last one. And I think that when you're speaking on video, there are a whole other criteria to take on board. And I'd be happy to take those offline and talk with anybody who needs that advice if they're going to be speaking in virtually. Yoko, I see your hand is up.
Thank you. Thank you for the very inspirational presentation. My question is about the ending. I already have the ending for my contest speech. I'm working on it, but I would like to refine in a way that is not too direct, and I want to make it in a way that is strong and relevant and sticky, but not refine a way that is twisted and elegant. And I was wondering if there's any books or any material that you read before that you can recommend to how to reformulate the ending part more elegantly.
Yoko, that's a really interesting question. I see that John Zimmer is online, and he's probably read far more about this kind of thing than I have, because I actually don't read about these things. I do it by instinct. And I think that in answer to your question, from my perspective, because you do pretty much what I do, you start with your end message in mind. If that end message is powerful and it is something that you really feel deeply, already it will have an element of elegance. And then it's the wording. I believe that the wording you use and the sentence structure that you use will actually deliver the message. I mean, I'm sure there are plenty sophisticated ways that people have come up suggesting how to end a speech, but I think that it's got to be authentic. I think that the wording you use will help you, and your sentence structure will help you. And remember that although you have the idea in your head, it needs to be put forward in a logical way so that your audience get it from you. But in any way, Yoko, I'm happy to help you with it afterwards, separately.
Thank you.
Mario.
Yes, Karina, two things. One, could you go back to your slide about the body and the motivational elements of a speech? You talked about the hero's journey, and I was making some notes and I didn't quite get all of it. And while you're doing that, I'm going to post something in the chat that I think people might find interesting. I did a presentation about Yodely through the Toastmasters website, and you talked about pace and evaluating a speech with a tool. So this is a free tool that's available to everyone. So once you log in on your My Home page, if you scroll down, you'll see a tile for Yodely, and it's excellent for giving you your pace, doing all counting, and a little bit of coaching about your speech.
Yes, I've heard it being used. I've never used it.
Most people haven't used it, and I was surprised how good it was.
Right. So you wanted me to talk about that. Is that the right speech?
Yes,
I mean, the right slide, sorry.
that's all right.
Yeah, you know, if you've done an analysis of some of the world champion speeches, invariably most of them, and I've looked over the last 20 years, most of them have this, what I call the hero's journey. They start with, oh, I was down and out, I had no good fortune, and then it comes to this point where somebody helped them or they realized something, you know, there was a realization, and then that became their inspiration to change. It might have been something they realized, or it might have been the person who suddenly reached out and gave them support. In fact, the 2014 world champion spoke about that. His speech was, I see something in you. And he was a bit of a, I mean, in his words, a bad lad as a teenager, in and out of trouble, nothing major, but in and out of trouble, until it was a mentor or somebody at the, maybe Scouts or something like that, who invested the time and energy in him and who kept on saying, I see something in you. And it's that whole concept of that switch from being a bad lad to being somebody who sees something and who has an inspiration for change, whether it is from within or from a mentor or somebody in their lives or an event in their lives. But I call that, and I think other people do too, the hero's journey, where you go from being not sure who you are, and then suddenly you find the path and you have this whole experience that you share with your audience. And it's a way of sharing with the audience that they too can make changes in their lives, whatever they wish the change to be. Doesn't have to be the same change as yourself, but it's the giving them almost the path to making change. If that answers your question.
Thank you, Karina.
There are no more questions.
Yes, I have one. Hey, Karina, first of all, thank you.
Oh, hi. Sorry, Jean-Pierre.
Yeah, you're
didn't see
ignoring
your
me.
hand up.
Yeah, just first of all, thank you very much for this presentation. Fantastic and very inspiring. I'm just wondering if you could expand a bit with the speech opening, because I always found that a good opening, you can wrap the audience around and really have them fascinated. But sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It has always eluded me. Why did it work and why didn't it work? Do you have maybe some advice on what really works or doesn't work? I always find it eluded. It has always eluded me.
Yeah. Jean-Pierre, I think that one of the things that we have to learn is that it's not only what we're delivering, but that it depends on the nature of the audience. Now, sometimes in a small audience, the impact of your opening is lost because there isn't a ripple effect. For example, you may start with not a joke, but a flippant comment, which is effective in itself because you've opened it up. But maybe nobody in the audience really gets it. So nobody laughs, particularly if it was a joke. And because it's a small audience, and there's no laughter, it feels to you as if it's fallen flat. Now, the bigger the audience, the more likelihood it has of catching on, because one person might laugh and then the others think, oh, that was funny, and then they laugh. So that you have to build that in, because that is eating up time from your speech, because as people might start to react to something, you need the time for them to react. But I think, for me, the way I see it, and I'm really not the expert in this, you need to have that hook. It has to be something that really catches the imagination. That's why the cliffhanger is often such a good one. You know, I was running and suddenly, and then you fall, and then Mr. Contest Chair, and then you go into the speech. Or if you start with a question, or as I said, I think it was the 2018 world champion who started with statistics on smoking, which were completely wrong. And he knew they were wrong, and his audience, probably most of the people, knew that it was wrong, but that statistic created humor. And you know, if you were to say, I don't know, something completely ridiculous, I don't know, I don't want to make any cultural things, but if you were to say German lovers are the best in the world, you know, it immediately creates laughter. In fact, that's taken from, I'm not being offensive because I've taken it from something that Carsten Wendt had said. So you immediately create that moment where the audience will sit up and listen. And it's about making it relatable to an audience. And that's why I say that it's really important to try it out on a few people, your mentors. Don't try it out, obviously, on fellow contestants, because that's the wrong people. But try it out on your mentors or a few friends. And if you feel that, and Toastmaster members tend to be really blunt and really honest. They won't tell you if it's good, if it isn't. So you test it out, and test it out on people in other divisions or other areas, so that you can get that different cultural element and input. And if a few people say, oh, I don't really get it, or yeah, it's okay, or if they say it's really good, then you know you've got it. I think it's also the speed at which you deliver that opening. That's really critical, because if you rush into it and you're very enthusiastic, you might be enthusiastic, but you may have lost the audience. And also the length of the sentences. You speak English very well, and perhaps something I had to learn is that my sentences when I started Toastmasters were too long. And if my sentences were too long, and I've tested this out after feedback, I lost my audience in those first few seconds, because we are speaking largely to non-native English audiences. In our district, probably quite substantially. So think about the words you use, the vocabulary. Is it too sophisticated? Are your sentences too long? And if you're opening with a quote, is it a relatable quotation? If you're starting with a joke, is it maybe culturally uncomfortable for some people? And are you delivering it too fast, or the converse, too slowly? And there are probably another whole list of things that I could throw in there. Now, I hope that gives you a little bit of
more
feedback.
than expected. Thank you very much.
Lorraine, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for all these explanations. I'm new to this, and I was wondering also if any of this applies for table topics. I mean, I've experienced table topics, but I was wondering if there's also a specific structure, even in the 2 minutes that are allowed. Yeah.
Definitely. I think that if the more experience one gets with table topics, and that there's only one way of doing it, is standing up and taking a table topic as often as possible. But I think one of the tips that I would give for table topics is, when you hear that question, try and immediately link it to something in your life. I mean, some questions we can't because they're just so way out. I mean, the question in May in Milan was red. Well, it could be red as in the color red, and it could be red as in I read a book. Play with it whichever way you want. So in reality, that's a really broad question. But I think it was about 8 or 9 years ago, the table topic question was, what does humor mean to you? Go with that initial thought of, well, what does humor mean to you? Is it, I mean, we've all had moments in our lives where something was absolutely hilarious, and we had that incredible feeling of joy from the laughter, the humor, then go with that. Tell the story and just go with that first thing that comes to mind. Because I think that the longer you try and find something brilliant, the more panicky one gets. And you can always carve it as you're going along. But in answer to your very specific question about the structure, yes, I do think that you want to have an opening that is really powwow. And then the body can be either here or there, because you know, everybody appreciates that you're speaking impromptu. But what really wins it for you is that conclusion, really wrapping it up either with a twist or in an amusing way, but whatever way you're going to do it, link it back to your opening. Somehow create that loop so that your audience feel they're cocooned in the whole story. If you can add a twist, that helps. If you can add humor, I mean, that's obviously not all of us are naturally humorous speakers, but that's what helps with table topics. And just remember, I think the most important thing I learned early on is it doesn't have to be true. Nobody knows if it's true or not. If you want to go way outlandish and make something up, go for it, as long as you're good at storytelling and create that imaginary world for your audience. It is a lot about, again, clear sentences, good vocabulary, fun words. Those speaking or speech tools that I mentioned earlier on, they help in table topics enormously. Use sounds, and then again, use your body language. And it's surprising how quickly those 2 minutes go by.
Karina?
Thanks a lot.
Let's do one more question, and
well, Emma's had her hand up for a while.
One more question, yeah, and wrap it up in a couple of minutes, please.
Sure.
Thank you, Pam. It's so helpful. I was just wondering if you've got any advice on how to overcome sort of the inner doubts, either when you're talking or just preparing it, I suppose, and it's about how you keep that belief in yourself.
Well, I'm probably not qualified to answer that, because once I've written the speech, I think, oh gosh, this is brilliant, even though the audience might not like it. But I do think that you need to run the speech past trusted family members or close friends. And that if they confirm that you think your speech is good, if they confirm that, then that's good enough. And as long as you're practicing and refining it as you go along with the feedback that you get from your club members or your area members, the speech can only improve. And therefore you can only keep believing in yourself. I don't think that that's related to public speaking. Believing in oneself is something that we have in all realms of life.
Yeah, thank you.
Karina Castella's hand is up, but Mario has told me to wrap it up.
I asked for permission to ask one question, very pertinent for me. When you are training, Karina, the speech, what is the balance between writing down what you want to say and training just by speaking, crafting your speech, improving your speech by just walking and saying this? What is your I know everyone has its own personal way, but what's your tip how to break, being stuck? Because when we write, we are different. Of course, we write differently than we speak. How you manage this? Well,
the very quick answer to that, because Mario is looking very sternly at me. The very quick answer to that is I create all my speeches when I'm out walking. And then I play with them. And I've had some really interesting experiences as a result of walking and talking. Then once I'm home, I will write it down. And if it's for let's just say a project speech for the club, I might not write it down. But if it's for I often don't. But if it's for a contest, because I know I'm going to receive feedback and I want to be able to refine the speech, I will write down the first version and then keep saving them as different versions so that I can track because it's an iterative process, but that I can track the changes. But all of my speeches are always born out of when I'm walking. I can't just sit down and write a speech. That doesn't feel natural.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing this. That's so important. Thanks.
Thank you all. And if anybody has any questions, you know where I am. And if you want any help with speeches, you know where I am too.
Thank you, Karina. I think we're delighted that we could spend this extra time hearing from you, and we will, our boring topics, Karina Castella and I will be very brief. We have 3 more topics to cover, and I'm going to jump into mine before we lose any more time. Let me share my screen with you. So the question is, why compete? And we're going to start by hearing 4 Division D, actually 3 contestants and 1 test speaker from our last district conference, starting with Karina. And I hope you will all take some brief notes about the key points that these 4 speakers make, and then just mention them at the end. I'll ask you to open your mics. So what I want to do is start with Karina. She already covered some of this today, but let's hear from her one more time. You don't hear it. Okay,
No, there's
stop
no
the share.
sound.
Excuse me, let me try again. One moment. So I have to share the screen with sound. I've done this before, believe it or not. All right, one more time.
Almost, you get to know yourself a lot better. As I said earlier this morning, it's not about winning. That is just the cherry on top of a multi-layered cake of self-exploration, reflection, and developing. Because through the process of honing your skills, learning your speech, and getting the feedback, you really learn a lot more about the story that you're telling and about yourself. And I think that more importantly than even all of that and what you get out of it in terms of learning about yourself is the incredible support and camaraderie that I received from members of the Nyon Club as well as other members in the division. And at every stage that contestants go through, you find these nuggets of gold, people who are so willing to share something with you, an insight that you could not have had and that will not get you, without it, you wouldn't get to shaking hands with the contest chair. And I would say to anybody, if you qualify to compete, whether it is table topics, evaluation contest, or English International Speech, just go for it. Because even going from club level to area level, you evolve. And with each subsequent level, and I see some nodding heads, you change, your speech changes, your message should stay mostly the same, but you evolve and I say you can wrap your arms around the camaraderie, the love and support that you get as a result of it. And if you win, well, great. That's just the cherry on top. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Karina. I also asked the same question of the Division D and actually the district champion for table topics, Mandy Broncil, and this is the answer she gave us.
With pleasure. So I think there's really 3 main reasons that I would say if you're thinking of competing, just go for it. The first one is push yourself and challenge yourself. I really went through it thinking every time, can I do this? Can I? At every single level, it was exciting. And I just really thought, okay, I'm going to do my best, genuinely, without, trying to hide and be like, it's fine, I'll just try. So that for me was a really, really growing experience. I mean, we're in Toastmasters to challenge ourselves, and I really, really challenged myself there, and I had that opportunity to do it. The second thing is that I discovered in the process, and this was sort of a byproduct, I learned so much about Toastmasters, about the structure, about the different people, the different clubs. I mean, I was confusing areas and divisions and districts because it is confusing. But through this process and speaking to so many different people, I really understood better how it works and more our position as a club within it. So that was sort of just on the understanding and on the interest of Toastmasters level. It gave me the idea to organize something like we did today. Let's leverage the fact that we're all together. And I think the third reason for me was just have fun. I did things in the evaluations that I would have been way too shy to do, like the galloping. I remember preparing with you, Pietro, in the room and thinking to myself, like, can I do that? Can I? No, I can't. And I was like, no, I don't dare. But maybe I should. And so that for me was also really a scary, but a great way to test in a safe environment, but still an ambitious one, what works and what doesn't. So it was a really great experience for me. And I would just say, go for it. There's nothing to lose. It's only experiences to be gained. Yeah.
Did I say table topics? I meant speech evaluation champion, Mandy Brunsil. We also had a test speaker coming from Division D, and I was able to get him to tell us why he was willing to participate in the district conference. And this is Alan Kikuchi-White.
When Yoko phoned me, I think 2 days before leaving for Milan, to ask me the question, do you have a speech you can give on Saturday? And I said, why? And she said, well, somebody's pulled out, we need someone, blah, 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 to do the speech the evaluation speech. And I'll not deny it, I was utterly hesitant. If not saying, why? No, in my head. But of course, I had actually done a speech the week before in club, the same speech that I eventually did in Milan. But I'd also got some really good feedback, and in my head I'd already started changing the speech and doing it in a different way in my head for another opportunity. And why, oh why would any of us turn down an opportunity to speak? That's what we're here for. So I said yes, quite simply. For me to get up and stand in front of that audience was amazing. I got to meet Toastmasters. I was going to the conference anyway, but we got to meet Toastmasters from different clubs, and I travel for work, or used to do before COVID. But like you, I like to try and find a club in whatever destination I'm in. So that was a great networking opportunity as well. And of course, ultimately, that speech now has feedback from 8 excellent evaluators. And when I dig that one out of the closet again and dust it off for use, I know exactly how I'm going to change it. It's already changed in my head. It's got a different beginning and a much stronger end, still with the same.
Right. And finally, we heard from our Division D table topics champion, Ramin Koué, who had some advice about why you should compete in table topics.
Some reasons why to do. First of all, I think table topics, like evaluations, where I competed as well, first, and I'm happy Mandy went on, is when you don't have time. So it's great, you don't have to prepare, because for speeches you really have to prepare. So table topics, it's wonderful to compete. You don't have to do much, you just go there, right? So that's one. Secondly, I had a bit of a dilemma, because in fact I was accepted and invited to give one workshop and a panel discussion in the 2 days. So it was great, I was looking forward to it. And then I had this dilemma, well, because they said you cannot do both, apparently. Well, okay. So you cannot be a speaker and give a presentation and be a contestant. So I really had to choose, and I consulted with some internal Toastmaster mentors. And then after some deliberation, I thought, okay, I'm actually not going to do giving the workshops, because I was comfortable in giving it. I'm happy to give those workshops. I've given them. I felt a lot more stress participating in the contest. And although it would be only for 2 minutes to go to Milan, I thought it's worth the stress, because like Mandy said as well and others, I wanted to challenge myself and learn and grow. But what I didn't realize, it's what was good, is the positive stress you get. Once you compete, you are in a positive stress, and that's when you push and stretch ourselves to grow. And that by force, you do need to practice. Although it was maybe last minute with my friend Pietro in the train, you actually can practice for table topics as well. So I learned as well, when pushing and stretching yourselves in an area you're not comfortable, that's when you actually learn, grow, etc. So whoever has maybe little time to do, still compete in table topics, it's great, and evaluations. You will still learn and grow, because the real experience to be there on stage in that moment and to hear red, it makes you, learn and grow.
Right. So there you heard from 4 Division D champions, 2 district champions, about why to compete. And so now a little audience participation. Does anyone have any take-home messages from these 4 speakers about why you should compete? Were there anything that you all caught in those comments? No takers? Right. Well, I think the message was pretty clear from everyone. I think everyone, generally speaking, have made the same comment. If you're thinking about competing, go for it. Challenge yourself. Grow through the experience. And I don't think that I can say it any better than those 4 people did who had the experience of competing last year in Milano. So with that, just to keep on track, I'm going to pass it over to Karina Castella, our Chief Judge for District 109. Karina, do you want me to keep going with the presentation sharing on my side, or are you going to share from your side?
I will ask you to share on your side. It's easier for me, and I will keep talking.
Okay.
The courage, you can start with the first slide.
Sure. Fellow
Toastmaster, you have to have a courage and challenge yourself, and it also builds a little bit of stress to take a role on the contests, to create a beautiful, a strong frame for excellence for all those speakers. Context is a very complex event. Here I will start with a short story. Once upon a time, when I was a fresh Toastmaster, it was 10 years ago, at the very entry, I was fascinated how Toastmaster meetings are well structured, how people are taking on different roles. But everything exceeded my expectations when I found myself like 2 months later, listening to the area contest, and I saw this guy, it was in New York, who stand in the middle of everyone as a chief judge and recitated 5 minutes all the rules of the contest. And I got scared. I said, never in my life I would be able to memorize and tell the rules in this sequence in front of such an audience. It's worse than being on the stage and delivering a speech. Hence, with the years of helping on different contests, I must say I won't be afraid standing in front of you and just talking about the contest rules, something that was for me unbelievable to be able to do years before. There are, of course, different roles that we take on the contest. Let's go over it very quickly. Some requires more responsibility than others, like contest chair. He's overseeing the whole organization of the contest. He can delegate also contest Toastmasters, so he or she, they can brief a little bit behind the stage when someone is interviewing contestants on just managing a part on the stage, representing contestants as well. Then there is a second role that requires also a whole team, which is the role of the chief judge, surveying and finding judges, tie-breaking judge, also timers, ballot counters, and sergeant at arms. The third very important role, and here it requires excellent technical expertise, very difficult to find, is being a Zoom master. I call this position a crisis manager because always something happens and we have to react in all those hybrid mode, as you know, managing a sound, managing disruption of the videos or some devices that connections that are disappearing, and this person has to be able to be under the highest stress, a high voltage, almost as contestants on the stage. So we appreciate anyone who can take on this challenge. All other roles like timers, it looks easy at the meeting, but taking responsibility to be a timer on the international contest on higher levels, you have to be very precise. You just can't lose the time. So I think it looks very easy, but changing the colors, measuring the time, putting the notes correctly, it is not easy. It requires a quite good concentration. When I was doing this first time at the contest, I was just shaking. If I'm just really concentrated correctly on this speech has 5 to 7 minutes, on which moment to put the light and measure also the minutes in between. Let's move to the next slide now. Mario, thank you. I would like to talk overall about the benefits of taking a role. For me, starting as a timer, sergeant at arms, ballot counter, it was always the opportunity to practice teamwork, networking, and gaining personal exposure. You just start learning about the organization, learning, working together with other people, and just meeting fantastic human beings who can share some of the Sunday afternoon with beautiful sun, sitting somewhere in the room and just managing the 5, 6, or 7 hours running contests. You are a part of the team. You will also, in this position, you will immediately learn, you will be exposed to manage and avoid conflicts. And this is something, I think it's a basis, a foundation of our leadership today. How can we release tension? How can we make working people together this beyond our different opinions? And you have responsibilities like contest chair, Toastmaster chief judge that require commitment and high performance. You must be willing to read the rule book, and it's worth this because you learn so much about Toastmaster structures. It takes maybe 2 hours to read this contest rule book, which many of us don't do, but we quickly look, oh, what are the rules? We forget it. But I can tell you, reading this and trying to underline the points, it's something that makes from you then the knowledge base, a person who can also share this wisdom with others. You are ready for answer, and if you don't know the answer, you know where to look for this. Overall, you gain more confidence as a speaker on the stage. Those are different roles, but it conducts to the same. You also learn how to build the authority, how to find people. Can you imagine what kind of authority Yoko built to convince Alan Kukuchi White to be able to be on the stage next day? This is incredible. Bravo, I was fascinated with this. I would love to have the same persuasion skills. And this is, of course, because we know people. So we know how quickly we can reach to someone to help and conduct all these events. You organize, you also augment your organizing event skills, setting deadlines, thinking about this timeline, running after others, reminding them, I need this and that on this time. We always need someone doing this. But for all those efforts, we are also thinking there are cherries on the cakes with many layers, which are the recognitions through the pathway projects for being involved in the contest. We can show the next page very shortly. Mario, you don't need to read this text. We just, thank you, Mario, for preparing this. We just reflected which pathways projects could apply for taking part on the contest. Now, maybe you have immediately this question, being a judge or timer, sergeant at arms or ballot counters, how would it count? What I advise you, when you are a team and you take already the role, one of those roles which does not apparently require much organizational skills, a big performance, you can also contribute to the organization of the whole event, taking down this role several times and taking to prepare the room, to set the stage. All of this could be also counted as a project management on the pathways. Now, we usually, after the contest, we ask for the feedback, we sit together, we give feedbacks to each other. Therefore, we do not need, by completing this project on pathways, you don't need to give a speech on it and give the feedback, because you will receive it already within the team. And that's all on my part. I ran through. I don't know if you have some questions about taking the roles.
Thank you,
If not-
Karina. Are there any
Yeah.
questions for Karina? Yoko has a question.
Thank you, Karina. I was very happy to learn how not only the contest chair and chief judge, but the ballot counters and timers and other role takers can also register their contribution for the teamwork as a project management assignment. I think it's up to, please correct me if my understanding was not correct, but I think it's up to the member themselves to consult with the BPE. I'm working on, I'm serving as a ballot counter, for example, for the area contest, and I'm spending so much time on this. So after this, I'm going to register this as this project. So please approve this as my completion. It's up to the member and the club BPE to just coordinate, get the advance confirmation, ideally, if not after the event. And if there's some question by the BPE, then the BPE can
there is no rules
contact
on this. There is
Yes.
no rules, but I advise strongly that people who are ahead in the whole organization, who are contest chair, contest toastmaster, and often is division or area director, actually. I mean, on the club level, it's not so complicated. I will not count those roles on the club level because there is no complexity. But if you then are the area level and in advance you agree to take some roles and also contribute to be on the team and prepare, there must be energy, time involved, not just coming on the event and being a ballot counter. I will not count it. But it should be discussed before. It should be also admitted by the contest chair or contest toastmasters in advance and then prepared. And I mean, depending on the area and whether either area or division director should write to the VP of education, just confirming that this person took on this and this role, was engaged, received the feedback, and we would like this person to count it as a pathway project. Then you have also to go on website and to Basecamp and mark it completed. Read this project. It's not just like go over the pages. So I advise always to be conscious and make the best match with this, with what was done, that's adequate to the effort. That's why we have those level 3, 4, 5, depending on how much energy and engagement was involved in it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Back to you, Mario.
You have another question, Karina, from Vena.
Oh, yes.
Hi. So my question is, I'm the president of the Basel International Speakers Club, and this is my first time as a contest chair for the club. So my question is, if I need roles to be filled in, how am I supposed to go out and ask for people who are interested? Do I just mail people through EasySpeak? Or because I don't know many people out here and I'm still trying to network. But how do we actually, I know a lot of people have their own connections and they try to reach out, your friends, but I'm not in that position as of today. So
it's just a very good question. Let's start. We always start, there is a first time when we have to start networking. And in the role of a contest chair, you have less job than the chief judge. So I will suggest you to find a chief judge, someone you trust, could be a very reliable and unbiased person who knows the rules and can be your chief judge. And your chief judge is in charge of finding the whole team, who are judges, timers, ballot counters, sergeant at arms. If he can't do that, you can also post on the right that, look, we need people to help, etc. But finding judges is something the most important job of the chief judge. Contest chair should motivate contestants, in my opinion, to motivate people to compete together with the VP of Education. This is my advice. And at the end, if you give them just make this a good time ahead, that we usually run and just ask anyone coming in the room, or could you be a ballot counter, because we didn't have a time. If you want to have an elegant event and make the event from the contest, just take time to prepare it advance and make people, if you make an email to the club, just explain that those roles are important and it's about the quality of the contest. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you so much, Karina.
You're welcome.
There's a lot of questions in my mind. Thank you.
Carina Schey, did you have a question? You put your hand back down.
It wasn't a question. It was actually to support the other Karina's answer to Vina's question. I think that if it's your first time, it might be good to have a contest chair mentor, somebody who's been a contest chair before who can give you some tips.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Karina. That's a good idea too. I'll have to find someone now. That's the point. Thank you.
Well, your question actually led us to the last segment for the evening, something that I'll present on how to organize a contest. And I think for me, the best way to do that is look at it graphically. And I actually made a mind map, one that I did a while back. And Yoko, I think you might have made some changes to it. So I'm going to ask you to evaluate my mind map and maybe we can upgrade it and update it going forward. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can all see what I'm talking about. If I can find it, here it is. And so what I wanted to do was just to show everyone what when I think of a contest, this is what I see. I see this structure. And I updated these dates here. So the club contests need to be between the 1st of December and 19 February. These are dates that were put forward by Elena. Area contest dates are here as well. So this is something you can have a snapshot of. And of course, we have a contest chair who's supposed to be responsible for organizing, being the project manager for these contests. At the club level, the VPE or the president should assign or select the contest chair. At the area level, it will be the area director will select the contest chair. And of course, division director would do that at the division. And as Karina with a K said, finding a chief judge is really critical. And once you have that, half the battle is done, because the chief judge has a very big responsibility for organizing many of the players that are in the supporting roles. And in fact, the chief judge is really managing the contest in parallel with the contest chair. The other key players, a contest chair at any level may select or appoint somebody as a contest toastmaster. Of course, the contest chair could do this themselves, and this is the person who actually, the day of the contest, introduces all of the speakers prior to the contest, briefs the speakers, and I have a whole task list of tasks that they have to do in advance of the contest and things they have to do after. So let me zoom in on this so we can see what we're talking about. So the contest toastmaster could be a separate person that's been assigned at the area level. I think it's a great idea that the contest chair, if they want to do one of the 3 contests, international speech, table topics, or speech evaluation, they could do one of the contests and allow somebody else to gain the experience of being a contest toastmaster. Now, the things that that person has to learn is how to brief the contestants. So they have to do all of these things that I've listed here before. And I think you'll find all of this as tasks that have to be done in the rule book and some things that I've added. So I won't go into all the details, but you can find them in my PDF that I've posted to the chat, and I'm happy to share this with anyone. Let me zoom back out. Before we establish the contest chair, you need a contest team support. That team has to decide first on a date and a venue, very critical, and they have to be together, because if you have a date and you can't find a venue, then that date is no good. So, and if you can find a venue, it has to match the date. So that's the chicken and egg here. Very important. You have to have a budget, especially at the area division levels. You need to set an agenda with your team and a marketing plan, announcing far in advance when the contest is, getting a registration and invitations out. As Karina said, the chief judge has lots of tasks to do. It's a big job. So I've kind of summarized what's required here at each level. So how many judges are required in the club, area, division, and district? How many ballot counters and timers and so on. So these are all the little roles that need to be filled. Because we are hybrid this year, the Zoom Master becomes a really important element. I actually did this without thinking about the hybrid, but I think most of the elements are there. Now, the other thing you might want to do is consider getting somebody to work in your team as an event host, somebody who's responsible for finding the venue, booking the venue, organizing all of the details that are associated with managing the venue, food and beverage, coordinate the announcements and the invitations, the registration, all of those things. And you may need a finance manager depending on how if you have fees for the contest. Right. So these are all tasks on the top level that have to be done before the contest, and below things that are done after the contest. So, or on the day of the contest and then after. So for the contest chair, tasks that need to be done on the day of the contest and then after sending results forward. The same is true for the event host, whoever's managing that, and also for the chief judge, tasks that need to be done, and Zoom Master, and of course the contest chair. There are tasks that need to be done there. So that's it in a nutshell. And I don't think I need to go into those details. All the information is here, and I'm happy to speak with anyone about this offline as well. Are there any questions about how to organize a contest? Yoko.
Mario, I have comments and not questions. So if for the sake of time, if I should talk with you offline, then I'm happy to.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I felt that in the previous contest preparations, there were some easy to get lost information, such as finding the test speaker. I think it's a contest chair's responsibility to find the test speaker, but it's easily forgotten when you are organizing the contest for the first time, and also for the preparation of the winner certificate and certificate of appreciation. I think this can be asked support. We can ask support for contest sergeant at arms if they are willing to help, but I think ideally the contest chair has to sign it anyway, so it has to be dealt before the contest and should not be forgotten. Thank you.
You're right, and I did have the sergeant at arms here listed under the chief judge, but that is a function that the contest chair and the contest toastmaster should manage. Right. Thank you, Yoko. We'll update this and publish it. Allison, did you have questions or comments?
Yes. So I'm an area director, among other things, and I recently heard from one of my clubs that they don't want to get involved in the area contest. And I think I got the impression, like it was a very quick email, but I get the impression that they would be okay with actually showing up for the area contest. They just don't want the bother of a club contest. So I'd like to know, under what circumstances is it worth having a club contest versus just nominating someone?
Yeah, that we've encountered this in the past. In fact, my own club has done this as well. We've run contests and we've also nominated contestants. So it's up to the club to decide, or the club committee, depending on how many contestants they have. Our club rule is if we have more than 2 people that want to compete at area, then we run a contest. If we don't, the first 2 that raise their hands, and if they're the only 2, then they go forward. So it depends on your resources, you know, how healthy the club is. And I would say that it's entirely up to the club. They can elect or select 2 contestants normally going forward if that's the rule in your division.
Or how about this kind of reverse question? Can you recommend a way to like encourage like a club that doesn't want to bother with a club contest, and like how do I convince them to that actually the area contest doesn't have to be any problem for them? Somebody could just show up and be a table topic contestant.
Yeah, well, that's part of what we were trying to do today with this presentation. So hopefully you made some notes. And it was interesting because the 4 people that I presented on these videos, they all said the same things. Don't talk yourself out of it. Don't think about it. Just do it. Just, you know, take the opportunity, have fun, and speak.
So just basically go for it. Don't
go for it.
Make it more complicated than it is.
Right.
Thank you.
Harshita.
Hi. Thank you for your sharing your mind map. It was very interesting. I have a question. I'm trying to support 2 clubs to do a joint club contest because of resourcing. So we're kind of supporting each other. What's your recommendation of how to make it successful? Yeah.
We've actually done something similar when I was division director, having 2 areas run a joint contest, and it is a good idea because you can draw on the same judges. So running international speech for one club and then following the next contestants, you know, you call that contest an end and you start with the next one. And so the judges can mark their ballots after the first club contest and then continue directly with the next one. So it's easily done, and it's a great way to use the resources that are available to you. So if I guess you're all in the same town and you can all share the same room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And just to be clear, I don't know if you're all aware of this, but clubs can have any kind of contest they want. It can be online, in person, or hybrid. The area contests must be hybrid. The division contest will be hybrid, and the district contest will be hybrid. Karina.
I just want to add a short comment for those hesitations, how to motivate clubs to conduct contests. I think it's important also to promote it as a social event and not only a simple meeting when we ask everyone to participate. And I was very pleased when I was invited to different clubs in a role of a judge or ballot counter, whatever. And they had a small apero or something, just they did do something, celebrated the people who won. And that made the meeting into a nice event and the recognition of the contestants. And the same for joint contest on area. Plan this in advance as a social event. I also found very nice, it was your division, Yoko, when people made a Canadian picnic, just we don't have funds, we know this year, but in advance that someone brought something, and it was very nice time that we spent together. So I appreciated this way of organizing the contest.
We have one more question. We're 1 minute over time, so let's take the last question. You're muted, by the way, Francesca.
Yes, thanks, Mario. It's just a short question. Well, we will run a club contest for Lausanne International, the 3 contests, so the table topics evaluation and the speech contest on club level. Now, I want to just make sure on club level you can compete let's say, in all three disciplines. But what happens then when you go on area level? Then you have to decide in which discipline you're going to compete or not.
It's my understanding you can compete in all three. Karina?
You can compete in all three, and in fact, I have done so.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
You just need the 2-level in pathways to compete in the international speech contest.
But in this case, if we have a really, let's say, a good speaker who competes in speech contest and evaluation, if he or she wins, she can represent the club, in fact, in both contests on
Yes.
area level.
Yes.
Okay.
At area, and if the person wins more than 2 contests at division, they can represent their division in both contests at district.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for your time and attention. Elena, I'm going to hand it back to you to close this out.
So I would like to give a warm applause to all our speakers today for this session, Mario, Karina, and Karina, all of them. And I would like to thank you all for being here today. I would like to let you know that the next Contest Academy session is on 14th of December. And information about all the Academy session you can find on our website. And I will share with you the link to visit our website so you can decide what to attend. And of course, we have the Leaders Academy, again on our website, where you can attend too. And we have a lot of speakers and very well-known speakers that is a very good chance to meet them, because they are not from our district mainly, but there are people from our district too. And on January, we will have a Stanford professor here. So that would be very nice to hear him while he will come to share his knowledge with us. So have a look at the sessions, and we have very good speakers in our district, and don't miss the opportunity to hear them. Thank you very much for being here today, and have a good evening, all of you. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Elena. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.